Shalom uvracha to everyone. I hope everyone is well this morning, this snowy Thursday morning as the snow is starting to taper off. Um, I hope everybody is safe and warm and has some hot chocolate, and everybody is doing well this morning. Again, we continue to daven on behalf of anyone who's ill, and we continue to think about all those who are suffering in our community and beyond. And we wish them well. We wish our country well. We wish the world, and we hope that the vaccines, as they're rolling out, will have a major impact in bringing us back to some sort of normalcy that we experienced up until last March. I wanted today just to share a quick thought, something to think about as we go through this narrative of the Joseph story. One of the interesting things that, especially a narrative that we've read many times, is to try to find new perspectives, new angles, new ideas. And one of the interesting things that been thinking about again when I'm rereading the story is a lot is who knows what and at what stage do people start to have questions, start to have doubts, start to rethink their assumptions. And we think about that with the brothers. At what point do the brothers recognize how ill they treated Joseph and that they don't want to commit the same mistake? At what point does Joseph feel that he's ready to reveal himself to his brothers? What does Joseph believe about his brothers? What does Joseph believe about what his father thinks? These are all interesting questions. At what point does Yaakov start to have questions about what happened to Joseph when the brothers came back and told him that Joseph's was torn by an animal? Was he fully convinced? Was he not fully? One of the interesting questions that I think kind of hovers over this entire narrative is exactly who knows what, at what stage, and at what point do people start to rethink their assumptions. And in this week's parsha, we may have a little bit of an inkling in terms of Jacob starting to rethink what's going on in the whole story. And it may relate to, and this is a point that a number of Chazal may have been hinting at in their commentary, and also my good friend Rabbi Amnon Bazak has pointed this out as well. And of course, one of the interesting issues in the Bible here, as we see that the brothers go down to Egypt twice in our parasha, and in the first time that they go down and they don't recognize Joseph, they don't recognize Velohi Kiru. Joseph recognized them, but they didn't recognize Joseph, who they had abandoned, years ago, 17 years ago, many years beforehand. The Bible tells us the story that Joseph manipulates to be able to hold on to Shimon, and he comes and he says in verse 19 in chapter 42, Im kenim atem, if you're telling the truth, one of your brothers will come here and be held in captive in our prison, and you go and bring back the food, and your brother bring back velo tamutu. Now, it's interesting. At this point, the Bible tells us that, excuse me, at this point, the Bible tells us that Joseph holds back one of the brothers. The brothers have pangs of guilt. Aval hashemim anachnu. We are guilty for what we did to Joseph, and here we're getting our comeuppance. And they come back, and at this point, they are, told by Joseph that you have to bring the rest of your family. You have to bring Achichem Akatan. You have to bring Binyamin back if you want to be able to see Shimon alive. And they come back to Yaakov, and Vayavo el Yaakov, and they tell him what happened to them, and they tell the whole story, and they say, bring the child. And Yaakov says, no way. Vayomer Alehem Yaakov, oti shikaltem, you have hurt me, you have made me bereaved. Yosef enenu, Joseph is no longer here. V'Shimon enenu v'et Binyamin tikchu alai hayachulana. These things are going to all happen to me. Vayomer Ruvain el aviv et shtei banai tamit. Ruvain says, you can even take 2 of my children, you can kill them if we don't bring him back. And Yaakov is still insistent that he's not interested. Lo yered b'ni machem ki achiv meit v'hu levado nishar ukra'u ason. For his brother is dead, and he is alone. He is the last son of Rachel, the beloved wife of Yaakov, and he's not going to let Binyamin go. Okay, so that's it. There's no future. Shimon is stuck. In the very next chapter, the Bible tells us that the Ra'av became much stronger. V'ra'av kaved ma'od. It was very severe. And the Bible then tells us that Jacob says, okay, go back down to Egypt. And the brothers say, look, we can't go back unless we bring Binyamin. And at this point, Yaakov agrees. Now, why does Yaakov agree? With all the pain, just a few psukim earlier, he had, refused. Now, you could say on a simple level, of course, that simply the situation, the circumstances became very, very strong in the sense that the famine got worse. Things were really getting to a point that there was no choice. Also, one can note the difference between Reuven's approach to Jacob, which doesn't speak of taking personal responsibility. He says, you can kill my 2 children, which of course is ridiculous. These are the grandchildren of Yaakov. While Yehuda talks about taking personal responsibility. He says, Anochi ervenu miadi tivakshenu. I will personally feel responsible. You can seek out miadi tivakshenu. You can seek him out from me, which of course has an echo of the story of Et achai anochi mevakesh, where Yosef spoke about he was looking for his brothers. He was seeking his brothers. And here, Yehuda talks about you can seek out the child from me, a responsibility. And at that point, Jacob lets them go. And what's interesting is what he says. And this may also be a key to understanding why Jacob also allows it. Because maybe Jacob has started to percolate in his mind that there's something off here. This very strange story of the person asking about, do you have a father? Do you have other children? Do you have other siblings? And he says, because Yehuda told the story. When Jacob in chapter 43 says, why did you ask him? Why did you tell them that you had another? Vayomru, and they said, even though it's not explicit in the text that Joseph asked this is the way they perceived, this is the way they presented. Sha'ol sha'al ha'ish lanu l'morotein lemor ha'od avichem chai, hayesh lachem ach, vanagedlo al pi advarim ha'ele, hayadoa neda ki yomar horidu et achichem. Because he said, do you have a father? Do you have a brother, and is your father still alive? That might have triggered something in Jacob, that maybe there's something going on here. This king is asking about your father, he's asking about another brother. What's going on? And it's interesting when Jacob lets them go back down. The last words he says, Ve'et achechem kachu, take your brother, v'kumu shur la'ish, ve'el Shaddai, which is, of course, a very striking name of God. It's the covenantal name of God that is used when Jacob passes on the blessing, when Yitzchak passes on the blessing, when Avram passes on the blessing, when God gives them the covenantal blessing. That special name, El Shaddai Yitein Lachem Rachamim Tzei Ha'ish, V'shilach Lachem Et Achichem Acher Ve'et Binyamin, V'ani Kasher Shakolti. And God, El Shaddai, will show you mercy, and he will send and release the other brother and Benjamin. And of course, the rabbis noticed it said other brother. It doesn't say Shimon, who was in jail at that point. Why does it say the other brother? And the rabbis, of course, say that there's a kind of nivu'ah here, that it's a kind of ambiguity that echoes that maybe he's referring to Joseph. And if we want to read it more on a pshat level, is that ambiguity in the text trying to push the reader to think about that did Jacob, at this point, the reason why he let Binyamin go is because is Jacob slowly but surely starting to think, maybe there's something going on here. Maybe this shalit, maybe this king knows something more and is interested in our family. Maybe he can tell us something about Joseph. Maybe this will lead. Maybe Joseph didn't really die. Maybe Joseph was captured. Maybe Joseph. Is that why he's saying, and why the Bible presents it with ambiguity? V'shilach lechem et achichem ha'acher, the other brother, instead of just saying Shimon. Does it raise that possibility? And of course, this is interesting as we read the story, as I said, to try to figure out the psychology and where people start to think something is off. And how do people start to question? And when the brothers start to rethink, and when do they have any hints? Do they have any suspicions? At what point? And what did they tell? And did they ever tell Jacob? And Jacob start to think, who knows? But maybe this is part of the drama that we're supposed to think about as we read the Joseph story. And again, something to think about over Shabbat as we read through the Parsha carefully. I want to wish everybody Shabbat Shalom. I want to wish everybody a wonderful last day of Hanukkah. Please remember this Mincha, Friday, when you'll be probably reading this tonight or tomorrow morning, Friday, is the last day of Hanukkah. Hallel V'zot Chanukah, the long Kriyat Torah, for those who are able to go to Kriyat Torah. And, of course, at Mincha time, please remember to still include Al Hanisim. I hope everyone had a wonderful Hanukkah. And again, everyone should have a Shabbat Shalom, safe and warm. And again, if anyone needs anything during the storm and you want to contact us, myself, or Deborah, or anyone else in the shul, please feel free to reach out. Shabbat Shalom and Chanukah Sameach.